In business today, three things to know. First, world leaders gather in Paris to attack the ISIS threat. We'll have a report on the strategy ahead. Then, European disunion. With the Scottish vote on independence this week, now part of Spain wants to break away. For Europe's markets, it's high anxiety. And 0-3. The NFL finds itself in a deeper hole, but so far, player malfeasance hasn't cost it a penny. Arise Exchange for Monday starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. This is shaping up to be a big week in the fight against the Islamic State. Several key events are on the agenda. In Paris, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry joined leaders from 30 countries gathering to discuss a global response to ISIS. On Monday, the group pledged to support Iraq by, quote, all possible means. In Washington, Congress is scheduled to begin hearings this week on backing airstrikes in Syria, where the Islamic State has now killed 2 American journalists and a British citizen. Arise News contributor Eric Ham is in D.C. to bring us up to date. And Eric, in Paris, did we get a sense of a cohesive plan that's coming out of there?
Well, we're still beginning to see a number of members actually join this coalition, which at this point is pretty impressive. You've got approximately 40 nations that have actually committed to this mission, which includes 10 Arab countries. So right now we're still seeing, I think, the beginning stages of a number of members join and of course, several commitments in terms of what they will bring to the table.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What
Sure.
sort of are the individual countries bringing to the table? Are they divvying up the responsibilities here?
Well, at this point, we have Australia, which has actually agreed to provide military jets. We do know that that France has agreed to also begin air reconnaissance around Iraq. So those things are very important. What's very interesting at this point, particularly given the brutal beheading we saw of the British citizen this past week, is we still don't know what commitment that the British are actually going to bring to the table, or if they're even involved at this point. We do know that they support in theory, but in terms of actual funding for military operations, that's just not on the table right now. But this is coming together, and it is looking like a pretty impressive coalition that will be beginning to fight. The question is, when do we see all this actually enacted?
And so far, the U.S. has ruled out working directly with Iran, and there's some concern, I guess, that this is creating a little bit of a vacuum in the region that Iran can benefit from.
Yes, and there have been reports that there have been some back channels from the United States to Iran to actually get on board with this coalition, but actually Iran has spurned those advances, but at the same time, you had Saudi Arabia and both United Arab Emirates actually said that they would boycott this Paris conference if Iran was actually invited to participate. So the United States does recognize that Iran has an enormous amount of influence in the region, and they do want their support, because what the United States doesn't want, particularly from Iran, is for Iran to free ride on what the United States is doing in the region, thus freeing up their resources to continue their global or their regional ambitions to become the hegemon in the Middle East. So it's going to be, I think, a very tricky dance going forward with the United States working with some of these other Gulf states, but also trying to get Iran to get in the game.
Eric, for the administration, one of the words that we're not hearing is war. And this was the question that came up a lot on Meet the Press over the weekend and the other shows. Why is there a reluctance to use the word? Does that sort of trigger a different level and a different policy?
You know, that's a very complex question. I think the reason we're not seeing this administration use the term is because of the upcoming midterm election. So I think it's a political calculation on behalf of this president and this administration. But I think as we see these congressional hearings take place over the next few days, I think they will be pressed on that, because if this is not war in the term that we're using, but by the looks of it, we're actually going to war, with the exception of actual boots on the ground in terms of the spending and the time commitment that will be there, by all accounts, it looks like war, and it is war. And I think the administration needs to be careful in terms of how they couch this, given how long this could take.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi said, well, it's certainly hostilities. And so I think everyone is sort of walking around that word a little bit. Eric Hammond, Washington,
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sports commentators are saying the NFL season is off to its worst start ever, and not because of the games. 3 high-profile players are facing a range of disciplinary action due to their off-the-field troubles. Greg Hardy of the Carolina Panthers has been benched following his conviction of assaulting a woman. Adrian Peterson from the Minnesota Vikings now faces child abuse charges for allegedly hitting his young son. And today we got word that Ray Rice is appealing his indefinite suspension. All told, more than 20 NFL players are suspended for various infractions. Is any of this impacting the league's bottom line and therefore a real threat to the job of Commissioner Roger Goodell? Mike Bako, sports editor at dailynational.com, is back here on Arise Exchange. Anything you're hearing from the sponsors here of the NFL? Because that's, at the end of the day, where the decision may be made.
That's where the decision may be made, because they're paying with their wallets. They're opening up and buying sponsorships. FedEx has come out and issued a statement. PepsiCo, 2 of the biggest sponsors, have come out. Other owners, who certainly speak with their wallet, and that's where their interest lies, have also come out in support of Goodell and the investigation that's going on. But the more you hear about these things, high-profile players like Adrian Peterson, eventually it's going to start hitting teams at the bottom line, and eventually it'll trickle down, I think, to other players. Not necessarily the Tom Bradys and the Eli Mannings or the Peyton Mannings, but what about that car dealership that may want to have a Jets player who's the second-string defensive lineman come to one of their events? Are they going to want to roll the dice and go with
you're always
players
rolling the dice when
who
you go
they
with the
don't
players.
know what they're going to actually
Yeah, and
get?
maybe the impact is going to be on the players at first. You know, Bryant Gumbel, the host of HBO Real Sports, is a longtime NFL commentator and sports analyst. He was pretty clear. He says there's only one thing that's going to motivate the owners, and that is money. And he says the fans play a role because we may be complaining about the league, but guess what? We keep going and watching the games. And he said, I think Gumbel had a great line where he said, we may not like Congress, but we like our congressmen. We may not like the NFL, but we like our teams.
Exactly. Did you watch football this weekend?
Certainly did. Though another week with the New York Giants, that might be it
as
for
did
me.
I, and as did millions of other people watch. Tens of millions played fantasy football. Even more on top of that, probably gambled. So people are not turning away from football.
And the sponsors look at that too, obviously.
And the sponsors
Eyeballs.
look at that as well. I think an interesting trend that we're going to see possibly in the next month or so, once NBC starts trumpeting some of their Super Bowl plans, $4.5 million to advertise 30-second spot in the Super Bowl. If they have trouble selling those, that might be our first indication that sponsors are talking with their wallets, and that might be a message to the NFL.
Do you get a sense on any additional pressure on Goodell? He did not go to the opening of the 49ers stadium this weekend, and that's certainly being questioned, so he must be feeling the pressure a little bit.
He must be feeling the pressure, and I'm sure he would have felt the cascade of boos that probably would have come down on him. Love him or hate him, when he's gone to events, the NFL draft here in New York, I've covered it, where fans have clamored to take pictures with him, get autographs, cheer him. I think that's going to be a different story if he tries to show up at games, at least in this next foreseeable future, while the investigation is going on.
I'm going to credit one of our anchors, Julian Phillips, for this question, because he brings up an interesting point. Are we demonizing the NFL? When you look at the totality of the number of people who work there, it is, at least on paper, a small number of troublemakers.
It's a small number compared to society, compared to other type of jobs. I think what people are having a hard time with is the discipline that is coming down, and to a certain degree, the reaction of the players that are involved. Ray Rice, very disingenuous apology the first go around. Adrian Peterson releasing a statement saying today, by no means am I abusing my child. I was disciplining my child the same way that I was brought up. So, Adrian Peterson, are you just continuing the cycle? This is also a guy who very unfortunately had a child die last year at the hands of abuse of his the mother.
So he's
of
been there.
Yes, he's been
and
there.
also the Carolina Panthers only benched Hardy today
After pressure.
And they said, well, the environment has changed.
And that environment is seeing what other teams are doing, seeing how the atrocious message that it was sending to have their owner receive an award late last week for domestic abuse, and you have this guy going out there on your payroll representing your team. Bad message.
You know, and ultimately, this is not what the NFL wants to talk about. If you look at the New York Times sports section, all of the stories above the fold about the NFL, not one about an actual game.
Absolutely
not.
not.
How to read about the Giants and Jets on the bottom of the fold.
And even last week, even more bad news, a study partly commissioned by them saying 3 out of 10 players within 15 years are going to suffer from dementia. That is also big news.
So there's kind of sort of a cascading effect here. Maybe they'll turn it around and the league will be better for it in the end.
We'll see.
Mike Bako, thank you so much. The Fed begins its 2-day open market committee meeting tomorrow. Ahead of that, stocks did finish mixed on Wall Street. Here are the final numbers. The Dow closing down. Dow actually turned it around, closed up 43.63 to 1731. It is the S&P 500 that closed down. And the NASDAQ had a rather big tech sell-off ahead of the Alibaba IPO, down better than 1%. General Motors has increased the number of deaths related to its faulty ignition switches to 19. This raises the number of families who can receive compensation for the accidents. GM closing up 36 cents. Microsoft has officially purchased Mojang, creators of the hit game Minecraft, for $2.5 billion. Mojang is behind the top paid-for app on both Apple and Android operating systems. Microsoft closing down 45 cents. And healthcare group Danaher has agreed to buy Swiss dental implant maker Nobel Biocare for $2.2 billion. The deal is expected to create the world's largest dental implant firm in the growing market for cosmetic dentistry. Danaher closing down a quarter. And commodities, gold closing up, and oil up about 58 cents to 92.85. Coming up, Europe may find that breaking up is easy to do. You're watching Arise Exchange. Informative. The U.S. economy is on the right path, and the wizard of the Fed is leading the way.
We started our companies originally to create something that made a positive difference.
Compelling.
I became very successful, not allowing myself to be average.
Our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reason. Yeah, he sort of lost all business. Investors came back from the long weekend, tanned, rested, and ready to buy stocks. Entertaining money daily, Arise Exchange. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Apple is once again setting new pre-order records for its new iPhone. Despite the issues with its online sales system, Apple says it sold more than 4 million iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus handsets in just 24 hours. That tops all previous set records, though not surprising since that happens every time Apple releases a new iPhone version. Probably comes as no surprise, but many members of Congress are a lot better off than they let on. Today, an annual list of 50 of the richest members of Congress was released by roll call. For the second year in a row, Congressman Darrell Issa tops the list with a net worth of over $350 million, largely the result of his success at manufacturing car alarms. He is followed by Congressman Michael McCaul and John Delaney. Rounding off the top 5 are Senators Jay Rockefeller and Mark Warner. And it took a minimum net worth of at least $7.4 million to break into the top 50 list. As the rich get richer, state governments may be getting poorer. According to a new report by S&P, the rising wealth of the top 1% of Americans appears to be linked to a 3-decade-long slowdown in state tax revenue. How so? Well, the report claims that's because the wealthy often manage to shield much of their income from taxes and tend to spend a lower percentage of it than others do. And it's the 50th anniversary for Kellogg's Pop-Tarts. Over the past 5 decades, the iconic breakfast treat, you can have it more than just breakfast, has experimented with all sorts of flavors, the most popular being frosted strawberry. It's also had its share of flavor failures, which include chocolate peppermint, wild watermelon, and cherry chip. And to celebrate the Big 5-0, Kellogg brought back a retired classic, chocolate vanilla cream. Sounds like dinner. Catalans living in northeastern Spain have been energized by Scotland's upcoming independence referendum and are hoping to carve out a new Mediterranean nation. Former Barcelona resident Jackie Mathurin, business development manager at Globibo, joins us now by the phone. Jackie, thank you for joining us here on Arise Exchange.
Thank you for having me.
You lived in Barcelona for 8 years. So what is your reaction to Catalonia wanting to secede from Spain? This issue has been going on for some time.
Yeah, actually about 500 years. So no, I'm not surprised. It's been going on for a while. Catalonia does consider itself to be separate from Spain. It has its own language, its own cultural identity. And, people don't know this, but the laws in Catalonia are actually different from that of Spain. So when you live in that region, you're governed by laws that are not Spanish. If you go to school, the schools are in Catalan, and they don't feel that they're part of Spain. So I live there, but I didn't live in Spain. I lived in Catalonia.
And what kind of autonomy then does it have right now?
Well, again, as far as education is concerned, they get to dictate their own agenda for what the kids learn in school. It has to be in Catalan. Spanish is kind of considered a second language. The big thing, I think, has been money and sort of cultural identity. For a lot of people, they know that the war is between Barca and Real Madrid, but they don't know it's a death fight. It's a fight where it comes from the time of Franco, where Catalans could only speak Catalan, their language, when there was a football match and Barcelona was playing. So they really wanted Barcelona to kill Real Madrid. And financially, it's the wealthiest part of Spain. So they want to keep more of their taxes. They feel that they're sending their money to Spain, to Madrid, and they're getting a very, very small portion of that back.
I was going to ask you about that, about the financials here, because would Catalonia be better off, do you think, if it was separate? When you compare it to Scotland, the argument is Scotland is going to have a whole bunch of problems if it goes on its own.
Well, I think Scotland has a lot of natural resources. With Barcelona and Catalonia, it's been more service industry. It's an area which financially is quite lucrative, and it's a big money generator for Madrid and the rest of Spain. However, I think just standing on their own, it would be like a little Andorra. It really would be quite isolated if it were to separate. And also, I think, unfortunately, with the Scottish issue, it feels inclusive. I've been to Ireland. I've seen the stories of what people have gone through, and there has been suffering in Catalonia, but still, there's a sense that they want to be by themselves. They kind of want to kick everyone who's Spanish, who's been in Catalonia, out, and kind of have it somewhere that it's Catalonia.
This has a feel more of a nationalistic movement than Scotland, which may be more economic. There is a vote coming up in November. Now, unlike in Scotland, this vote is not being recognized by Spain. So 2 questions. Which way do you think the vote's going to go? And then how is Madrid going to react?
Well, it's kind of complicated. They've been talking about it for a long time. The vote is considered illegal. There are Catalans who do not want to separate. It'll be interesting. It's always close. The feeling is always there. But I really don't see the momentum to actually get it done. It's quite hot right now, but there still is a big part of Catalonia that does not want to leave Spain. So I don't see that happening.
And from what so you think that the vote could go either way right now then?
Yeah. But it's quite a hot issue. I think that there's a small, very powerful minority that have been talking hot air for a very, very long time. But I think that there are a lot of people who love the fact that Catalonia is part of Spain and they're part of Europe, and they love living and being part of the Europe.
Well, I'll tell you, this is freaking out the EU, because as the EU tries to bring everybody together, now there's sort of cracks in the armor there.
Well, the thing is that having lived in Europe, for me as an American, it was a very interesting. Interesting experience, because we would come across villages that wanted to separate. There's a village in Catalonia which is called Cirques, and they wanted freedom for the Cirques. So, there's a feeling where people are very proud of their cultural identity and they want to preserve it, and that's been very problematic for functioning.
And hundreds of years of complicated history. Jackie Mathurin, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Ahead, one country confuses the Suez Canal with the Panama Canal, and one rapper demands someone in a wheelchair stand up during his concert. Our favorite person of the day is next here on Rise Exchange.
If I was building my own network, it would be for the people, by the people. It would be very diverse. It would be with every culture you can think of.
If I was to start my own news network, it would reflect positive and negative within the continents and the countries around the world.
I think that I would be more looking towards young people.
If I were to build my own news network, it would look like New York City. Old, young, fresh, hip, classic.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected, and diverse.
If I was to build my own news network, my own world network, I would love a correspondent in every country, every location, every city. I mean, it's kind of unrealistic, but how cool would it be to get local stories from the impoverished country, the impoverished city that we don't know about?
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
The great thing about Arise Entertainment 360 is that we cover the 360 of entertainment, food, fashion, lifestyle, culture. We're able to cover it all. And the thing I love most about the show is we're able to do a stunning combination of high and low. So we can talk about Rihanna on the red carpet, but we can also speak about high art with people like Sanford Biggers and Hank Willis. We actually spend quality time with our guests and we really get to know them. It's really intriguing because we get a 360 look at our guests.
We have a bonus 3 stories in Liquid Lunch today, stories that make us want to drink. First up, Urban Outfitters sure knows how to grab attention by turning one of the nation's darkest moments into a sweatshirt. The retailer sold a Kent State sweatshirt with fake blood stains for $129. In 1970, 4 Kent State students were killed by Ohio National Guard troops as they protested the Vietnam War. The school says it takes great offense and invites company officials to tour a new memorial to the victims of the Kent State shooting. Then there's the fine police work by the Los Angeles Police Department. The LAPD says it's investigating an incident over the weekend where an actress claims she was questioned and handcuffed by a police officer and accused of being a prostitute after she was seen kissing her boyfriend. Daniel Watts, who is an African-American and starred in the movie Django Unchained, says there was no reason she was cuffed and put into the back of a police car. She was just kissing her boyfriend. The LAPD says the incident is under investigation. And Egypt needs a bit of a geography lesson for places in its own backyard. Egypt issued a postage stamp commemorating a project to expand the Suez Canal. The only problem? The drawing on the stamp actually depicts another canal, the Panama Canal, which, for the record, is thousands of miles away in Central America. Egypt has stopped printing the stamps. And that does take us to our favorite person of the day when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reasons. Today it is hip-hop star Kanye West, who demanded all the fans attending a concert in Sydney stand during the show. When 2 people did not stand, West singled them out and refused to go on. Why? One was in a wheelchair, and the other had a prosthetic leg. Here's a clip.
I can't do this song, I can't do the rest of the show until everybody stand up. There's literally 2 people left. With Pascal, there's 2 people left that don't want to stand up.
The fan with the fake leg actually waved it so West could see, and he waited until he got proof that the other fan was actually in a wheelchair when he said, fine. And so Kanye West is our favorite person of the day. A lot of competition today for it. Kanye, you win. Next, changing careers and making millions doing it. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us. Last week on Arise Exchange, the 13th anniversary of 9/11 unfolded the way the others have, with memorials and moments of silence. The Ray Rice fallout, the cost to the Baltimore Ravens and the NFL.
For them to deal with it the way they did, they clearly dropped the ball.
You know what we need protection from? People who wear Elmo costumes. The government forcing people who dress as SpongeBob SquarePants to get licensed. Maybe they need to see a shrink. I don't know about SpongeBob. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange.
I believe that people are watching news less today, definitely. I think that more so people are going online to catch their news.
We've numbed the human mind to murders and all these bad things. The content is a constant loop of the same stuff. So there needs to be, new content all the time.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
In tonight's corner office, turning your dream into reality. Many of us work 9 to 5, yet desire another career path. No one knows this more than our next guest, Dr. Jay Rubens. After more than a decade as a dentist, Dr. Rubens turned his true passion into big profit. He launched a line of hand sanitizers with a twist, and he's here to tell us all about it and why it is never too late to change careers. Jay, welcome to Arise Exchange.
Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it.
You were a dentist for a very long time.
I was.
And then you made a significant change. So walk us through why you decided to do that and how you sort of came up with the guts to walk away from a good practice.
Well, it was entrepreneurial in my blood from when I was a kid with all the different jobs that I had, et cetera. But I was never really as passionate as I wanted to be about being a dentist, but I enjoyed building the practice itself. So I started my practice from one patient all the way up, and I grew it to thousands of patients. But again, I wanted to get into the business world. So,
and the key, by the way, is you still had to show up to work every day to make money.
I did.
And there's a line that you're not really running a business if you have to show up to work every day.
Well, that's true. That's true. And for me, I'm a passionate person, so I really wasn't feeling it. Even though I had a very large practice, it was very lucrative. You know, there were things, but the things weren't doing it for me emotionally. So I happened to be in a hospital once and working in a dental clinic, and I saw that people really weren't washing their hands. So I had an idea to make, because I studied behavioral modification, if people could have something that made it easy, simple, and fast, being touch-free. Now, touch-free wasn't invented at that time. I invented the first touch-free dispenser.
That's right. And
that
we
was
have
to
it actually
increase,
here,
yes,
by the way.
to
I
increase.
bring that up here.
That's it. To increase. This is a version of it, but to increase hand washing events. So that's how I started in that journey. And the more I thought about it, the more I was more consumed about building a business around this new invention than I was about the dentistry.
Okay, so tell me how you got started with the idea of alcohol-free sanitizers, which is really key, by the way, because not everybody can use alcohol.
Correct. So that was the beginning of it, the genesis of pulling it through. I built the business that's still in existence today, 24 years later, the touch-free dispenser business. And the alcohol products came out, and I couldn't use them on my hands. They just made my hands dry and crack. Because of certain sensitivities in the market with competition, all I can talk about is myself, and I couldn't use the alcohol products, so I started thinking about an alcohol-free. And in 1997, this was the epiphany for me, the CDC released the information from the AMA that basically people that were checking into hospitals weren't checking out, and they related to the lack of hand washing. 60,000 people had died in 1997 that checked in because of lack of hand washing.
Because of bacterial.
Correct. Yeah. So that, for me, I became very emotional about making a change. I became emotional about having an alcohol-free product that went with my touch-free product, because that would make sure people increase their sanitizing events, and that's what the CDC wanted, to increase having people sanitize their hands as frequently throughout the day. But how do you do that if your hands, like me, were dry and cracked?
And also, I have read, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but when they contain certain antibacterial, it reduces our immune system a little bit, though.
Well, it could if
it
goes systemically, meaning inside your body. Now, the way our products work, alcohol-free works, it's called benzalkonium chloride. It's what's in eye drops and nose sprays, but it's blended into a hand sanitizer, so it works with the natural oils of the skin. So when you work with the oils of the skin, you don't strip it away, which means you can't get it into the bloodstream.
So did you have trouble finding backers to do this? How did you I mean, because first you got to make the thing. You got to raise some money to do it. And then you got to get it into the stores, and you know that it's the big companies that control the pipeline into the retailers.
It's a journey. You just have to be persistent. You have to have high integrity. You've just got to never give up. You knock on 1,000,000 doors. If you have to talk to 100 investors to get one, you do it. And we were fortunate I stuck with this. We started the company 2011. Previous to that, I had some research and development that was done, but now we're in 6,400 Walgreens.
You're in Walgreens, you're in Safeway, you're in Albertsons.
And we have very close to two major licenses.
Do you find that you constantly have to reinvent the brands a little bit or put new brands out there to sort of keep the public's attention?
Well, that's a great question. We do that with our brands. We're branching out now. We have a pen-sized sprayer, but now we have a product for safe paws for pets. Because a lot of times you come in, you have mud on your feet, and you wipe the feet off, the dog comes running into the house.
Sure.
So we're really expanding it to the family.
So you can use this on animals, what you're saying?
Well, yes, we're going to use it because that product, animals...
And it's safe when they stick their paws into their mouth after?
Yes. Well, what people don't know is in this size bottle, 2-ounce bottle of alcohol gel, is the equivalent of 6 shots of vodka, or 140 proof. So it can be toxic to your skin and can be an issue.
I want to ask you about the book, Breaking the Bounds of Traditional Success to Find Happiness. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, that's really about the story of looking within yourself and looking to see what do you want out of life, where do you want to go. And I could have settled with the fact, I say settled in the sense of the practice that I had, which was I built from the ground up. But I wasn't happy getting up every morning. In fact, it was very, very difficult to get in and go to work because I didn't enjoy what I was doing. And I've loved every minute of this. I mean, every day I get up. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Our message is I want everyone to quit their job and to go out there and do what they want to do. And you're never too old to do it because you're only getting older.
That's
So
true.
if you want to do it, and you can do it.
If you find your passion, I'm telling you, if you find it, never give up and keep on going.
Jay Rubens, thank you so much.
Thank
Fascinating.
you. I appreciate it.
Come back soon.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on the Rise Exchange, the Fed begins its two-day open market committee meeting and expects another $10 billion cut from its asset purchase program. We'll have complete coverage. You're watching the Rise Exchange. I'm Andrew Schmertz. We'll see you tomorrow.